I wanted to introduce everyone to the homepage here and some of the other tips and things we'll be talking about today. So I've got about 20 things I want everyone to hear or are going to try and get across. What I'll do is I will go ahead and start with the homepage here. You can see that I'm on version 6.5.4, which is the latest release, but 6.5.5 is expected early next year. Just for y'all's information, you can see down here we've added this new part to the homepage to get information off customer net, so people have the visibility to see what's new, any alerts that have come out, things like that. So we continue to fine-tune this. There's also some new videos, so just be aware, new videos are being added, etc. So on the homepage, one thing I did want to make everyone aware of, if you're using 6.4 or 6.5 of Stratum, this homepage is the standard homepage. You're not required to use it, but if you are using it, the logo, for example, if you guys, when you want Stratum to come up, if you want it to have your logo, you can contact support with a copy of your logo, and that can be arranged. You can see here I changed from the standard Sylvan logo to a holiday logo. So you can do that kind of thing in Stratum. That's a real simple thing. All you got to do is get a logo over to support, and they can make that happen for you if you're using this homepage. So that's something there. The other is, as I go and talk to customers, I often find many of you still have the homepage that has the Sylvan logo with the spinning dot, whatever that's called. But it is interesting that you can have this homepage be a view. It could be your intranet, and that's a real simple thing to change as well. In fact, if I went and selected a view here that let's see, I'll select, say, a view like this current month scorecard. This is just an example view, but what I can do, we can see that view comes up, and that's showing me a scorecard. If I wanted that scorecard to be what displayed when I first came into Stratum, all I'd have to do is I could come in here. I'm going to open this thing that says Web Part. I want to get both those toolbars display, or both those menu options display. Say OK. That pops up down at the bottom. I'm going to open this. This is the code for a web part, the scripting for a web part in SharePoint. But what we care about when we come here actually is down here at the bottom of this is this particular where it says HTTP. This is actually going to execute the or that would open a view for me. So then I can go from there. I've got that, if that's the URL, and you can do this with any URL. I'm happen to do this for a view. I can go to admin utilities. I'll just go to my my user profile, and I'm just going to override the home page for me personally here real quick and select, right? Come here, and you can see here, override the home page. I'm going to paste that in there, save that, and now when I go into Stratum, if I go back to my home page now, it'll be that view. So that view will come up every time I go into Stratum. So if you have a view that people are focused on, it's something they want to see right away, you can set that up for people. That's a very simple thing to do. You can do that at the user level, or you can do that at the overall application level as well. So that's something you can do. A couple other things from the home page, or not necessarily even from the home page, but while we're here, this new user options piece. I don't know how many people are taking advantage of it, but for each user or as a user, you can set these user options, and we're going to continue to add to this, but there's a couple of things here that I think are relevant. Anyone that's worked with me much on what we're looking at here, by the way, when I say worked with me much, my name's Frank Bunker, for those of you that haven't met me before. I'm frank.bunker@sylvan.com if anyone has questions. But I've been around our product since its inception, and I got elected for this particular webinar where I'm supposed to be able to relay some good information to you guys, so I'm going to give that a shot today. But these options, I can do a couple of things. So auto hide the left panel. This particular option was added when we allowed the website to go mobile, so that on a mobile device, say like an iPad, you might, every time you go into a view, you might want this panel over on the left here to be hidden. that in fact you can set that up so that happens every time you go in. I prefer to work with it open, so I don't have that happen. And then the other is whenever you run it, you can also set this up so that whenever you run a view, the View Explorer is open. So if you have views that you go into and routinely if your first pass is generally to open the View Explorer and make changes to those views, you can go ahead and select that so that you don't have to click to open the View Explorer, and then you can obviously close the View Explorer once you're in there if you want to buy some more real estate on the screen. But that's an option as well. The other thing that I do, this comes out, this override the view page size. This comes out and comes set to 20 and 10 or something. I forget what it is exactly, but I always override this so that I can get some more rows. So I don't want the views to necessarily run away from me. So I set this so that you can see mine are 270 here, but that gives me a reasonable amount of rows on the screen, etc. Now that particular option in 6.5.5, I believe, in the upcoming release will also be available at the view level. If it doesn't make it into 6.5.5, it'll be in the following release. So that you'll be able to soon you'll be able to set the view page size per view as well. So if you know you've got X amount of data in a view and you want to see the first X number of rows, you can do that. So those are some tips on just some of the settings you have around that stuff. So let me show a couple other things here. I'm going to go into a view here that's this view in particular uses the time as a dimension or trended time. I'm going to go ahead and hide the left panel here. Now, one of the interesting things, I forget exactly which release it came out in. You used to be able to hide the left panel off of a icon here up in this menu bar right here. That was moved to this little arrow. And then subsequent to that, you can just basically click anywhere in here or click on the Sylvan logo or Stratum logo to get that to come and go. It's much simpler than trying to find that little arrow and hit it each time. So here I am in a view. I've got this full screen going on, and what I wanted to mention here was actually that we added some time ago where when you're using time as a dimension and you have the months, for example, it could be the weeks, the months, whatever it is, going across the page or down the side. In this case, I have them going across the top, as you can see. And in my demo, it's always September. We have data January through September. I can sort on the total of this data by going to the total, and we added the ability to sort and filter on this particular the columns over here. So whatever axes you have the measures on, in this case, as you often do, and the default is the measures are on columns, I can actually go ahead and I can sort here. You can see I'm already in descending order. I can also filter, and I can use all of my, my top counts, all that kind of stuff. So I can come in here and say, top 5, whatever it might be, and I can select those. So that's something that you can do to reduce the amount of data that you're looking at or filter whatever it may be so that you only see X amount of data. Another thing, just so you're aware, whenever you have a funnel or the sort arrow, you don't need to right-click and resort. You can just click right on those entities, and it'll in the case of sorting, it resorts them. In the case of a filter, whether it's a measure filter or a dimension filter, you can just go ahead and click on that, and it'll bring that filter right up again, and we can go ahead and, for example, I'll just remove it in this case. So it allows you to do that. So that's a couple of things just on using some new features that were added a couple of releases ago on the over in the totals columns over here. So you have access to that stuff. So another question that we get a lot, and I show all the time when I'm talking to people in terms of demonstrating some of the things you can do with Stratum, is the ability to link multiple views together or link a view to another view. So if I'm looking at a specific set of information, and then on top of that, I want to get to more detail about some specific piece or a row that I'm looking at, and how do you link views together? So I'm going to go through that process. And in addition to that, this view is going to allow me to demonstrate a couple other things and talk about a couple other things as well. One is prompting. So I know that a number of people use prompting. I've seen that as I've done some user interviews, and everyone, I hope, is familiar with creating these parameters. But one of the interesting things in these parameters, once again, I think it's interesting, is here you have your classic member selection. And by the way, now when I click on member selection, this always takes me straight into the members dialog. So we've streamlined the flow through filtering some in the latest release, so it allows me to more quickly get to exactly what I'm looking for. And everyone knows how to search in here, et cetera. You can also see in this parameter that I have a ability to add a drop-down. So in this particular parameter, I've allowed the user to either say, hey, I want to search for somebody, or no, I know where they are, and I'll just grab those. Now, an interesting thing here is while you're in a list like this, a drop-down list, if you key the first letter, it will position to that. I just keyed in a W, and you'll see a position to the first Wilder Foods that I have. So you can position through the list by keying a letter. These drop-down lists are much, if you're using Stratum in a mobile environment, these things are way, way cooler than they are on a PC, because you can, as everyone knows, you can flick scroll through them, and it works great. But I'm going to go ahead and select Wilder Foods here. Another interesting thing I meant to mention, while you're building a prompt, this prompt can also prompt for user lists. So I could have a third option on here if I wanted. And you can see that when you build the parameters, there's an option to say I want to prompt the user for user lists. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. This particular view I like to show people because it answers or allows me to show a couple of things that people often ask about, and we wanted to talk about today. And one of those is, as I mentioned, the ability to link to another view. So you can see here I have a pop-up that tells me I can click on this particular icon that I have on a row, and I'll show how you set this up in just a minute. And it tells me I'm going to see the inventory availability for whatever product I'm on. And you'll note that in the pop-up, I have the product number identified there. And I did that just to show you some things we can do with pop-ups, too, to include information into the pop-up if you want to go ahead and use those. The other interesting thing, again, that I find interesting in here, in this particular view, is that I have open orders. So this could be orders or sales. In this particular case, the objective of the view is to say for a given customer, what items do they have on order, and where are we at inventory-wise? Do we have the inventory to ship for that? So you can see here I've got the open orders amount. I've got some other open orders data here. Then, most importantly, I have the open order units. And then what I really want to talk about is I actually have the on-hand or available inventory down here. Now, that often poses a problem for people because you typically don't store your inventory by customer. And you can see up here in the view, in fact, I can drag the customer right there and just drop it on there. And that'll show me that I have this data. I'm looking at this data just for Wilder Foods. By the way, the reason the totals came on there is I added the customer to the columns instead of having it in the filter. So now, by default, totals are on. Interestingly enough, I can go up here and right-click and just say totals no, and that will get rid of that. So you can also get rid of totals in the View Explorer. So when you open the View Explorer, you can also just right-click on columns, and I can turn totals off there. But I can do it in fewer clicks, which anyone that's worked with me knows I have a thing about too many clicks. So anyways, the inventory here is not stored by customer. So why does it display here? That's an interesting problem, because normally if I just took the on-hand from my inventory category, which I do have possibly by my distribution center and item, but by adding the customer, it wouldn't show up here because of the customer filter. And in fact, let me just demonstrate that real quick. I'm going to take the on-hand here and just show that. And when I show that, that's just going to show up as a 0. It's merely here to, there it is right there. I'm going to go ahead, I'll drag it down here next to available inventory. So you can see on hand, if I just use it as a blank, or I'm saying is not a calculated measure, it doesn't show up. And that, again, is because I don't store inventory by customer. So how did I get this to work? It's a calculation, and it's kind of a goofy little calculation, but I'll show you how that works. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, which, whoops, overdid it there. So you guys can see that a little better. But first of all, whenever you're creating a calculation that has an if statement or a tuple in it, or a hard-coded or default value, you need to, because of the way analysis services works, you have to have some way to control whether that calculation should be done for every possible combination or only the data you're displaying. And in this case, I only want to do this calculation if I have either open orders amount or open orders units. So you can see here I've said if either one of those or if both of those are not true, in that I don't have any orders information for the item, go ahead and just set this to null, and that way Stratum won't try and build a display for it. So that'll save you. That's a performance thing there. The other thing in this calculation, so that's this first if statement. The second part of this is, by the way, for those of you that build calculations, I hope you know if you put a / at the beginning, as you can see that I have here, you can put comments in here. It makes it much simpler as you go back and try to remember what the heck you were doing in those calculations. So here you can see I only want to do this calculation if, in fact, we're at the item level, because I only have, I'm not interested in inventory levels at anything other than the SKU or the item level when I'm looking at it. So here is one way you can check this if statement right here to see what level you're at. So I'm basically saying if the current item, if the product dimension, the current member at the product dimension is the product default member, then I want to do null. So what's that saying? It says that if I check the item or the product number and it's the default member, which happens to be null, then I know I'm not at the item level, so don't do this. Just set it to null and move on. But if it's not, so if it's not, or I know I am at the item level, then I want to do what we call ignore the customer dimension. And that's the whole trick to allowing me to see inventory. So when I'm looking at inventory, I want to basically ignore the customer dimension. So it's going to push that to the side. And to do that, I build a tuple. And that tuple basically just says customer. I went into hierarchies over here, selected, I'm going to put a couple spaces in here just so you can see what happens. I went down here and I selected the customer. The customer sold to, you can see I did that, and then I added in dot default member, and that just means use or build a calculation that allows me to say, in combination with the other dimensions that I have displayed, use the default member hard-coded, and specifically use the default member for customer here, which in essence is telling analysis services that I'm not interested in the customer for this measure right here. And that measure is the on-hand I was showing previously on the display. So all of that allows me to get to the fact that I can now see in this display, I need to go back to, I can see the inventory, and that's what that's showing. So versus just using the measure right out of the database, which because I'm at the sold to, I can't do that. Now, it's interesting that if you have a view, in this case, I'm trying to ignore just the customer number. I have another view that I'll show you that uses I have a calculation in this particular view that does run rate per day, and I have a category that tracks the number of working days. You can see this is the ultimate calculation. I have a daily run rate for both the actuals and plans. So I'm dividing that by the number of working days. I have the working days stored at a very high level, basically the company level for this particular database. So as I'm looking at the salesperson, the category, anything else I might look at in this view, I don't have the days at that level. So I'm using that same technique that I just showed for inventory, but I'm doing it across many different dimensions. And you can see here that if I go down to the, let's see, the total work days this month, I'll look at work days so far this month. By the way, when you want to look at the properties for one of these things, you can just double click. I see a lot of people go down here and do properties. You can just double click if you want. Either way, it gets me to the same place where I'm looking at properties here. I'm going to bring up the expression, and what you can see is those same style of if statements at the beginning where I'm just checking to make sure we have data. And then the last thing is this tuple, but you'll see, and again, I'll make this bigger. you'll see in the tuple that I've hard coded it. So unfortunately, the company that I entered my work days for is company question mark. Typically, you would use a valid company. This is a problem in my demo data, but nonetheless, I've said, hey, for the company that I have the data, which is question mark, plus for all these other dimensions that someone might use in this view, I just want to ignore and use the default member. So those are just separated by commas, exactly the same calculation we saw previously, but it only had it had the customer sold to, as a matter of fact. But you can just string these together. So if the view allows people to drill from one level to another, but you have a value that's stored at a single level, you can go ahead and see that. So, and then you can see the measure is here down at the bottom. So what's the business case for this after all that? The business case is very much the two things I've shown. One is I want to see inventory by customer, or for a sales guy where I don't typically have data stored by a sales rep or customer. So I can go ahead and display the inventory using that technique. The other is if you do have work days, we see more and more people doing run rates, daily run rates, things of that nature. You can go ahead and include stuff, daily run rates if they're day counts if you have them stored at a higher level and be able to use them. So this classically came out of the on-hand stuff, and I think there was an entry actually out on the forum where we described that. So that was one thing in this view that I like to show. The other thing in this view that I talked about was being able to link from one view to another. So the question we often get is, how do you, first of all, get a icon to display? And then number two, how do you make that icon link to a view? So in this case, if I was to go down, this view is showing me I'm using this inventory here, this particular product, this row right here. I can see that this guy's ordered 57, almost 60% of my inventory. So if I click on this link right here, this spawns a new view. It's running in a new tab up here and allows me to see the total demand that I currently have for that item, as well as the rolling 52-week average, and I can see that I'm way short on inventory for this particular product. So it allows me to go in and quickly see that. And that link could be to see more information about maybe the gross margin, maybe the AR for the customer, whatever. You can link to any kind of view. And by the way, you could actually link to things outside of Stratum as well, passing information that's on this row, and we'll see how to do that. So the first thing I have to do is get to get the icon to display so that I can have a column here where I can set up a hyperlink, what we call a hyperlink, which was introduced early on in Stratum 6. So one of the things, I'll go ahead and open the View Explorer so I can get to this. Now, one of the things, if anyone's created columns for whatever reason and they don't have a caption on them, you will find it's very hard to get to the properties. You can't click right there as you can on these others. But you can get around that just by going up here and clicking in this little blank space here and saying properties, and now the properties will show up down at the bottom. So the first thing I said was I wanted to get a icon displayed. So the first is when do I want people to be able to see an icon? So if you look at the calculation I have here, and this could just be a calculation that says null if all you wanted to do is put a button there. In my particular case, I wanted to have some conditions, not the least of which is their data, which is the first if statement. And then the second if statement here is, and I only want to do this when we're at the product or distribution level. So I checked which level I was on. In this case, I used a different technique to see what level I'm at, or if a given level is displayed. Than I showed you previously. The last one was a is. This is just taking an if and looking at the long descriptions and saying, hey, if the long description's null for either one of those, so I know in my data I have descriptions for everything. I know that we're not at those levels. So I basically just set it to 1 if it was a situation where I want the button to show, and then I set it to null if it was a situation where I didn't want it to show. So that's all that's displayed. Now, that value of 1 or null, or 1, you can see there's no 1s displayed there. I just turned that off by saying value no here. If I turn that on, you'll actually see that now this will change a bit, and it'll show that value of 1 on every row here. Not really interested in the user seeing that 1. That's only something I'm using internally, ultimately, to drive a conditional format. So I'll go ahead and turn that value off. So I'm just saying no right there. And that allows me to see just the icon. Now, how did I get the icon there? I went up and I actually added a conditional format. So a couple things about conditional formats. You can do a lot of things with conditional formats. I've used them to format the color of something. I insert an icon, but and this one's pretty straightforward. I went and said, hey, if the value is equal to 1, because my logic says, hey, I want them, if we're at the right place and we have data, I want them to be able to click on a link. Otherwise, I just want it to show nothing. So you'll see down here, I did no additional formatting when it's anything other than 1. But when it is 1, I added an icon. And all I did was come in here and I said icon, and if you go into the miscellaneous section, that icon that I'm showing is available. You can pick any icon you want. It's your choice. And in fact, there is the ability in Stratum, if you may or may not be aware, that you can add your own custom icons. So if you've got icons down here, I was playing around with some different size icons. Obviously, I don't think we want a button quite as big as that one. But here's that same button smaller. Say we wanted to have this as the report link. I have some thumbs up, thumbs down kind of stuff, things like that. So I'll change this just so we can see how that works. But that's a custom icon. You guys wouldn't have that in your selection. I added that to my demo here. But that's something you can do on the server. You do have to get on the server to add them, but there's a directory called custom under the icons directory that you can go ahead and insert additional icons if you want them to display. And now you'll see that. I'll show that particular icon. So I set the value to 1, and I then said put a conditional format to show it. So that shows me that. And now so once I have that, now I need to set up a hyperlink. And you can see here I said, yes, I want to have a hyperlink. So there's 2 things I need to do to be able to insert a hyperlink that at least to link to a view in the Stratum. In this particular case, I want to link to another view. So to do that, first of all, I need to know the view ID of the view I'm linking to. So I'm going to link to this inventory availability view that's listed right here. And to find the view ID, there's a couple different ways you can do that. Some of you may know how to go into the tables and do that. You don't need to go into the tables and do it. You can just do this. Go again to that web part. Just click OK. And down here, I'm going to open that web part. And if I scroll through here, again, down at the bottom of this web part, you can see right here, it says Sylvan Demo, and there it specifically says the view ID is 172. So I know for this view, the view ID is 172. So I know I want to link to view 172, and then I need to have the hyperlink for that. So the hyperlink for that, again, I'll pump this up a little bit, is right here. And where can you get this? So the first part, there are the examples of this. If you scan the help, if you go into help and search on parameters, you'll actually find some really good examples of these links. But basically this link here is saying, hey, I want to go in demo 2 5503 is just my server. I want to run, when I get there, this is the actual function I want to run, viewWindow.aspx, and then I pass in the view ID. Additionally, in that view, I want to pass in the product, and I want to pass in the distribution center. So there's a couple of things here. One, the name of these parameters to pass. Where did that come from? Well, if I go over on this side, and I'll just show you, let me shrink that down so I can get to a view. But if you remember, the view that we're trying to get into is this view down here, open our examples, this view inventory. I'm just going to go and show you in this view. Let's see here. I think I'll just cancel out of this and just go right into View Explorer. Those parameter names, amazingly enough, match up to the parameters I have right here. So in the view I'm going to, I have a parameter called product, and I have one called DC for distribution center. And that's where, over here, that name right there, product, and where DC came from. So that's the first thing. I need to know what the parameters are called so the view knows what to show. And I want to pass the product and the distribution center from the row that I'm on. So to do that, for example, to pass the current product, I simply say, with these plus signs, I insert the product dimension identifier, which is product.product, and then I say just show me or send the current member dot name. So I can do that. The reality of setting these up, as you guys probably very well know, is once you do one of them, you just keep copying one, and you would find I'm very consistent about what I call my parameters. If I'm looking for product, it's always called product. Warehouse is always DC. Customer is always customer. I'm very consistent so that I know if I want to link to any of those views, it's very easy to do. So that's how you create the link. That's just the link right there. And I insert it into the hyperlink. As I said, you can get that all the details of that. Number one, this thing's being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and scroll through it. And I go much faster if you play me on high speed, or you can scroll through to the whatever minute we're at mark and find this. Also, you can find it in the help, though. I think that's really the good thing is if you just search on the parameter, the word parameter in the Stratum help, you'll find some good examples. But anyways, that's how you add a hyperlink. The one other thing that I have here is I've added a pop-up expression that allows you to go ahead and tell the user that, hey, if you click here, you can see some stuff for the particular product that you're looking at. And to add pop-up expressions in their most basic form are really simple. You can just add text. You have to put it in quotes. Interestingly enough, if I just wanted to say click here, I can just put that, I just have that part that I've highlighted there. Again, I would just do that, put that, click to see inventory availability in quotes, and I'd be done. An interesting thing with pop-ups is you can actually use expressions to drive the pop-up. So in this case, I'm saying, hey, if that value I was looking at is a 1, which means I wanted the user to be able to click. If you remember going back to the conditional format we set up, I'm using that same check here to say if it's 1, well, that's when I'll show this. Otherwise, I'm just going to make it be null. So that's one thing. And then the other, you can see right here, after the text, which I had highlighted a minute ago, I added a plus sign. You'll want to put a space right there if you want a space to display. And I said, in the middle, right after that, go ahead and insert the current product. So it's going to take the product from the row that I'm on and put it in there. So right there, I've said, go ahead and add the product and use the current member name. And you could, interestingly enough, you could use the current member name, which is the actual value. So in this case, it's the product number. But you could also have selected, say, the product description. So if you wanted to have a pop-up that showed all of your puffs or attributes associated with a particular member, you could do that simply by inserting those here. And you can see, again, it's the wizard we have over here where you can go ahead and you can pick the information you want from the different dimensions that you're looking at in here. If I wanted the only one I have, but I could get the long description in here if I wanted as well. So those are all things you can do ultimately to build a view that allows me to, number one, link to a more detailed display showing me information for this item, devoid of the customer, so I can see the inventory unconstrained by that particular customer to understand the overall inventory picture. And then two, it allows me to see the inventory, the total inventory picture bumped up against whatever this particular customer has when I know that normally I can't see inventory at the customer level. So that was a long discussion for a couple of different things there, but hopefully that was helpful because I get those questions off and on from folks. Let's see, a couple other things I wanted to show. Oh yeah, this is just in terms of using that technique and the hyperlinking technique. I kind of like this view. I'll show this because what it allows me to do, this is a really valuable tool if you're putting together scorecards or you're showing KPIs, whatever your terminology is. This is a scorecard example I have. As I go across the scorecard here, you can actually see that like open orders amount. This allows me to say, okay, great, that's their total amount, but let me go ahead and see the detail behind that. So behind that metric, I can see for that customer sold to, which is up here in the filter, I have the ability to go ahead or here I've got multiple ship tos or multiple store locations I'm shipping to. I've got orders as far back as 3 weeks ago. I'm sure no one on the phone has back orders, but in case the situation comes up, I can see what I have back ordered. In addition, you can see I actually have orders from this guy out 6 weeks as well, which in my demo is pretty stellar. So, but this lets me see the detail for the open orders. In addition, as I go across, you can see here, for example, I can see detail about the gross margin. So there I have a gross margin percentage. I click on it, and in my demo, these are a bunch of the different cost components that I have available so the user could see more detail about the profitability and what's driving the margin for this particular customer. And then the last one I have, I think, is, out here in the DSO. So this is AR data. So again, I've got a scorecard here, but now this guy's off on his DSO, day sales outstanding. I click on it, and it allows me to see the detail behind what he's collected, and these are all things you could have in Stratum. Now, one other thing you can do with these hyperlinks, which is, again, something I think is interesting, is if I go back into this particular view up here, I'll go up here. Anyways, if I go into this view here, the sales plan performance, I'm just going to go in here. I want to show you something. If I go so right here, this is the view I showed you that had the daily run rates on it. But this view obviously has a hyperlink here. That's the exact same stuff we've been showing. But I have a hyperlink in here that only shows up at the customer level, and that's actually this little column right here that doesn't have anything displayed right now. If I go ahead and I'm just going to drag by the way, I often find people don't know you can drag stuff just into these little gray bars, and the view will change. You don't have to drag it and say yes. That'll save you another click. So you can drag stuff and drop them right on these gray bars right here on both rows and columns, or you can drag stuff straight into the filter to control things. For example, just as by way of an example, I could take if I wanted to see just Wilder Foods here, I can drag that up into the filter, and it'll actually filter this view for just Wilder Foods. So if I want to see something specific to just one thing, I can do that. So let's get back to what I was going to show, and I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to use the new filter button. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, but note I want to clear that filter. I'm just going to get rid of that filter. But my example was a hyperlink that, in this case, you may have noticed this in my conditional formats. I had a Google button. So I can go, and this is going to Google this text, the text for the customer. So I'm going to try and find out information, see if there's any news about the customer. What I like about this example is, there you go. They come up under Bizarre Foods of America. Perfect. But anyways, what I like about this example is it shows how you can call other applications. If you can put a URL in there to get to other applications, if you have a CRM or some other solution that you want to be able to pass, say, a customer number or the customer description or some value here, you can go ahead and do that through the hyperlinking capabilities in Stratum. So that's just another example of using those hyperlinking capabilities. So let's see. I'm going to go into one more view here. I promise I will be done in not too long. But this allows me, this particular view is just a real simple view. I call it comparative sales. It allows me to look at sales this year versus last year. Let's try that one instead. Allows me to see sales this year versus last year. It's got divisions going across the top. It's got brands down the side, obviously. I think what I want to do here is let's take the divisions and put them over here. And let's see, that'll give me brands. Maybe what I'll do actually is get this up so that I'm showing items. Let's get maybe I'll do brand and item. Let's see, I'll get the items going here. So I'll just get the items over here, and then with that, let's bring some salespeople into this as well. So let's actually drop the salespeople here. That'll show that, and then I'll go ahead and drill. So now I've got products subtotaled by salesperson. We're going to ignore who's selling well and who's selling bad in this particular view because that's not what I'm going to show you. What I wanted to talk about here was a couple of things. First of all was the idea of filtering. So in the latest version, we added the big filter button up here. And I think this, in conjunction with that, we've streamlined the way that filters happen. So a couple of things here. First of all, I can click on this filter button, and now I see any dimension. So all of the dimensions you see over in the View Explorer, I know it's grayed out, but they're over here. Whether they're on the rows, columns, or view filter, they would display here. So now a user can come in, simply click on the big filter button and say, hey, what I wanted to do here was filter on a region. So I'll come in here and say, I'll just click on the filter for region, and I really just wanted the eastern region. So I say, okay. What you'll see is because region wasn't in the view, currently it was not displayed. It was in the View Explorer, but it's not displayed in the grid. It's going to automatically get added in the view filter. So the user selected that. Now I'm seeing stuff just for the region. So again, and another tip there is, once I have this filter up there, I can go to the big filter button and I can remove it just by clicking the X right here, and that'll get rid of it. Or if I want to change that filter, I can just go up and click on that, and it'll take me straight in now. It doesn't take me to the what type of filter do you want, where you would select the member list or the user list or whatever. Now it takes you straight into the type of filter you already have, and I could change this to West or whatever. If I wanted to use a user list, I actually could come up here and say I want to change the filter type. So this More button is new, and I could come in here, and now you guys see the little window you're familiar with, so I can go ahead and use that window. So that's one thing. The filter button allows me to filter on just about anything, and I can go ahead and easily filter on anything in the view, or I can easily remove any filter in the view, so I can go ahead and do that. So let's do another thing. Let's go ahead and filter on salesperson, and in fact, let's pick, and I'm just going to pick some random salespeople here just to show the example. So let's say I want to get the sales for these, for whatever reason, only these selected salespeople. So we know that if I do that, I'm going to go ahead and now if I scroll through here, I'll get subtotaled for each of those guys, right? So I'm just going to see those people's sales. Let's say, in addition, for the products, what I really want to see is the top, the top 3 products for each guy. So I'm going to say, go ahead and filter, top. I'm going to say today you would use probably recursive or overall top count. You'll probably use recursive. So for those of you, if you don't have the latest versions, you don't have these ones up here, and I'm going to show you what those do for you in a minute. But if I used recursive top count, I could say recursive top count 3, and that's interesting in that it shows me the top 3. The bad news is it does it for every dimension that I have in the grid. So what I really wanted to see was the top 3 products for just the people in the list of salesmen. So I want to see all these sales folks that I have listed here and just the top 3 products for that. And that's what the new top count, or just the top count here is. This top count will only operate on the dimension furthest to the right in the display. So it's going to only do that for products. So now you can see I have all those sales guys here. My list is still intact of just those salespeople, but it's controlling what I have in terms of the products that are listed. Now, the other obvious thing that you might want to do in a display like this is I might want to add an all others row. And previously, in prior releases, you would, if you wanted an all others row, you came in here and you said all others yes. And if I say all others yes, that's going to go ahead and you'll see it inserted in all others row, which is exactly what we expected. The bad news is it inserted an all others row down here. Now, in certain cases, maybe that's what you want, and that's fine. But in many cases, and this came up by customer example, they had a list of their a select set of customers, and this particular customer has thousands of customers. And when they then they added the all others for they really wanted to see the all others for the product, but not all others for the customers, because the amount of time it took to go through tens of thousands of customers, along with hundreds of thousands of products, was quite time consuming. And really what they had was a list of some 20-something customers, I believe it was, and the top 10 products or whatever. I don't remember that number exactly, and they really just wanted the all others total for product. So today in Stratum, what we've done is, in the latest release again, just another tip, you can go ahead and actually you can say all others for by dimension. I can control it by dimension. So here I'm going to say all others no for the sales reps. I'm going to leave for product, I'm going to go ahead and leave that on. So you can see it's all others yes for product. So now when I run the view, what I'll have is the top 3 products with an all others row, and then that's for every one of my sales guys that I had in my particular list or my filter. So again, that's a way that you're able to pretty easily go ahead and see just the all others row for the right or any given dimension, as well as do the top X, top bottom X, top percent X, whatever it is, filter for just the right most dimension. So we had a number of requests for that. So that's something that's new, and thought I would let you guys know about that. So let's see. I had one other thing, just a small tip to show you guys. If I go in here and I go, I think, to stores, for example. So first of all, I assume you guys know that for by dimension, you can set up the type of filtering that happens. There's really 2 different windows that can come up when you go to the member filter. And the member filter now is the default unless you're filtered on something else. So it'll always go straight to that window. And if I look at divisions, which in my demo is a very small dimension, I don't know, there's 4 or 5 things, I forget how many. But, you know, there's only these things right here. So it comes straight to this screen that shows me all of the divisions, which takes little time. On store, though, I have thousands of these. So that shows up as what we call the advanced search, and you either have to key something in or click the search window to see things. That property, if you're not doing that and you have, for example, at the ship to level or the order number level, if you don't have that set to advanced, users are waiting a long time for that window to fill before they can see anything. So that was something I wanted to show. And then the other I wanted to show here, when you're in the advanced window now, it's kind of interesting. So I just searched on Wilder, obviously, and these came up. If I just wanted one of these guys or I wanted a couple of them, we added this window. Normally you could either go over here, click add all, or add the ones you've highlighted. And if you're doing an additive thing where I want to search on this, then I want to search on something else and add that to the list, you would continue to work just the way you always have. But if I just want those 2 things and I'm done, I can just say OK now. So that's just a little thing, but it saves you some work or some clicks in terms of I can get the data back that much faster. So that'll go ahead and that'll put that filter in. So with that said, those were some of the things we wanted to show you today. That was roughly 19 or